Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to How to Get Hired. I am Bill, the company's expert, and welcome to the weekly live stream where we talk about resumes, job interviews, discovering jobs, ATS, everything related to careers and hiring. So if you got any questions, this is your lucky day because we are going to be doing a Q&A later on. I'm going to cover a couple of topics and then get in the chat, and then you can ask me some questions. The title of today's episode is How to Choose a Career. So we're going to be talking about that. But before we talk about that, we're going to briefly cover the best answer to the job interview question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? So we're going to talk about that first. As always, special thanks to my YouTube channel members, my Patreons, my subscribers. All you guys are awesome. Thank you for your support. And for the participants. So if you are here watching this live, you're awesome too. And there are some advantages in catching this live. Yes, and as I said, I'm Bill, the company's expert, an expert in everything from A to B, put it that way. Okay, I see there are 16 people here. You guys are awesome. Let's get started. Oh, one last public service announcement. Once again, thank you to Ahmed, who is the latest member of my YouTube channel. Thank you for your support. Membership has its privileges. And let's get started. Oh yeah, and breaking news, the US employment stats are down. So some people are getting all fired up about these things. And yeah, there's a bit of a kerfuffle there, but what you got to remember is that these things are always blown out of proportion. And the real test is to see if this actually keeps snowballing. And usually things don't, and it becomes a non-event. The market goes up, the market goes down. It's usually not a big problem, but the real test is to see where it goes in the long term. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, we are going to cover the best answer to the job interview question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? So let's cover that. This is something that you could get asked in a job interview. What's going to happen in a job interview is that they are going to ask you a question about the future, and they're going to ask you a question about the past. This is how recruiters have been trained, taught in the last 30 years, certainly. So depending on how they phrase it, they may phrase it different ways. You're going to get one question about the past and one question about the future. And this is the question about the future. They're saying, where do you expect to be in 5 years? They're asking you for a blind prediction. Okay. Now, for if you're new to this, for a lot of people, it seems like this is a stupid question, like a lot of job interview questions, because they're asking you to gaze into a crystal ball and predict what's going to happen in 5 years. And that's ridiculous. For a start, you don't even know if you're going to get this job, right? You're here for interviewing for a job and they're asking you, where are you going to be in 5 years? Well, it depends if I get this job for a start, right? But that's not really what this question is about. You see, like a lot of job interview questions, they are probing for something that is more subtle. It's on the down low, right? There's a question beneath or behind the question, okay? And the purpose of asking this question is to try and determine, what do you really want to do with your life? What do you enjoy doing? Now, the implication of this is that if you're here for a job, to do a specific thing, right, and to do it in a specific way, they want to hire someone whose ambition is to do that actual thing, right? They don't want to hire someone who doesn't really care much about this job specifically. They're just here because they want any job that will pay them money, right? That's not what recruiters and hiring managers and employers want to hire. And I'm speaking from experience here. If you want to hire someone as a graphic designer, you want to hire someone who's passionate about graphic design, and they would do graphic design no matter what, right? That's the kind of person you want to hire to put in a role of graphic designer, right? You don't want to hire somebody that could work as a plumber or, a handyman or a kitchen technician or a graphic designer. You want someone who's passionate about graphic design, who eats, sleeps, and breathes it, and whether they work in it in this job or that job, or even if they don't have a job at all, they will still want to do graphic design, right? That's where this question comes in. They're asking you to predict where you're going to be in 5 years. Now, if you're up for the graphic design job, you don't want to say, oh, I want to be a plumber. I imagine myself moving away from graphic design and moving into plumbing, which is where my passion is. If you are into plumbing, you might really have a burning desire to wear your pants so that the top of your butt cleavage is exposed. I don't know. Hey, some people are just into that, right? Never shake a plumber's hand. But you know what I'm saying? That would be a fail for an answer. So let's talk about how to answer this. Okay. Don't say you'll be doing something else. Okay. As I implied, they are not actually looking for a real prediction from you. That's not what this is about. So don't take offense at the whole concept of this question because on the surface it's stupid and they're asking you for a blind prediction. It's not about a blind prediction. They're asking you about you, and about yourself and what you like doing and what you don't like doing and where you want to be, right? That's what they're really asking you about, okay? They're basically trying to get you to eliminate yourself by saying you want to do anything other than this job, right? That's a common thing that will get you eliminated by this question. And depending on if this company or this organization that is interviewing you, if they would like you to be ambitious or not, then if you say, I want to be right where I am now, that could also eliminate you, right? Some companies, they don't really care how ambitious you are. They don't want you to be particularly ambitious. If they hire you to be a graphic designer, they want you to be a graphic designer, okay? They don't want you to say, I see myself being a graphic designer for a year and then maybe moving up into management, right? They don't want to hear that because they're not hiring you to be a manager. They're hiring you to be a graphic designer. So they don't want to hear that necessarily. The other problem is that some companies, they do want you to be at least somewhat ambitious, right? If you're in a certain place and then 5 years later, you're still in that exact place, you haven't progressed at all, or taken on new responsibilities, or grown in any way, they may see that as a red flag, right? So that kind of muddies the waters a little bit. So if you say, I'm up for a graphic design job, they ask you where you see yourself in 5 years, you say, I want to be a graphic designer, but you don't say, I want to be moving upwards or growing or anything like that. That can be an issue, right? So basically, the answer to this question that I would recommend a lot of people say is, I see myself, one thing I got to say first is that this is an elimination question. This is not an opportunity or a platform for you to really talk yourself up and give them all kinds of great reasons why they would hire you. This is an elimination question. It's a pass-fail. So what you want to do is pass, but you don't want to spend 15 minutes on this question because you want to get to the part of the job interview where you sell yourself, where you give them a lot of great reasons to hire you. And this question doesn't really do that, okay? It's just a pass-fail thing. So you want a brief answer that shuts down the question relatively quickly, so you don't spend a lot of time here, but you pass, okay? And for that reason, I would say, if they ask you, where do you see yourself in 5 years, or where do you see yourself in 10 years, or any of the other permutations of this question, okay? I would say, I expect to be right here. I expect to be advancing based on my performance, right? That leaves it kind of open. It doesn't hang you. You don't give yourself enough rope to hang yourself, but it also kind of leaves the door open for I want to progress a little, right? Now, some people, they expand this answer and they say I expect to be have mastered this job. I expect to be an authority within this area, and I expect to be training others and sharing some of that knowledge and, helping the organization by, sort of improving and training newer employees in this area, something like that, right? So that's what I would say. Now, a couple of notes I made for myself in these horrible notes that I can barely read. You see me glancing off to the side, right? So I got my second camera here. I'm glancing down here for my notes. Two things I wanted to mention is that generally speaking in a job interview, what you want to do is you don't want it to be an interrogation where they fire a question at you and you just give an answer, and then they fire another question, you give an answer. Ideally, what you'd like to do is have a conversation. So you have a free-flowing, two-way, back-and-forth exchange, right? And you get the interviewer talking more off the cuff. It's more organic, right? They're sharing more information. You're getting information from them as well as they're getting it from you, right? So a great way to start that is when they ask you a question and you give an answer, you end your answer by saying, is that what you were looking for? Or is that the type of thing you're looking for, or something of that nature? So you give an answer and then you ask, something to the effect of, does that please you, that answer? Is that what you're looking for? And then that starts to turn it into a conversation. They say, yeah, that's not bad. And it's like, okay, or they say, yeah, that's pretty good. I was wondering if you were going to mention advancement, what's your attitude towards advancement or something like that? And then you start answering that and you end it with another question back at them. This is what I feel about advancement. Is that the type of thing that you guys generally do in this organization? Something like that. And next thing you know, they're telling you all about their organization and there's a bit more rapport going. So that's a great thing to do. And this question, which has a very short, curt answer, is a great opportunity to start turning the interrogation into a conversation. Okay? So there you go. And every time I press a button, it deletes part of my notes. That's beautiful. That's the command that I have of technology, just so everyone knows. Yeah, so there you go. So hopefully that makes sense. That's how I would respond to if you get asked in a job interview, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I would say, I expect to be advancing based on my performance, something like that. I have a passion, or you could say I have a passion for this type of work. I expect to be doing this and advancing based on my performance. And then if you want to try and turn it into a conversation, you then add, is that what you guys are looking for? Or is that what you were looking for? And there you have it. Okay, let's take a couple of questions before we move on to the main topic of this live stream, which is how to choose a career. I see that Joel, first of all, let's go back to the beginning. Someone is here, and someone says, thank you so much for the live. Well, thank you for being here, someone. Levin Joseph says, hi, I have a college interview in 2 days. How can I impress them? Levin, is that it? Well, you can impress them by having or speaking to all the things that they said in the job description that they were looking for. So instead of going into the job interview and talking all about yourself, I got this, I got that, I'm very proud of this accomplishment, I'm very proud of this thing, instead of doing that, only talk about the things that they said they were looking for. So if they bring you in for an interview, and if you go back to the job description, it says, under requirements, it says, we're looking for someone who has this, and this, right? Well, you go in there and you mention those things front and center. Okay? I got this, I got that. They say, what's your biggest accomplishment? You say, well, I have this, right? Tell me about a time that, you did that. Well, it was the time I got this, right? And these are all the things that they said they were looking for. So that's how you know they're going to care about what your response is, what you're saying. Okay? Now, maybe you don't meet all the requirements perfectly, right? They say we need someone with 5 years experience driving a forklift and you only have one, or maybe you've taken a class on forklift, but you only drove it for one day, right? And that was like 6 months ago, right? So you could say like, well, I can drive, you go in there and you say, well, I can drive a forklift. They say, what are your strengths? And you say, I can drive a forklift. I've driven a forklift, I've been qualified in it, and I know what I'm doing. And I was actually very, very good at doing it. Now, you don't volunteer any more information unless they ask you about the details of it, in which case then you would go into it. But you basically bring these issues up, bring these points up proactively so that they don't leave the interview thinking like, I don't see anything about forklift on his resume, and we didn't talk about it, so I have some concerns that he can't drive a forklift. You don't leave them with that impression. A great thing, I just want to say this one thing and then I'll quickly get back to questions. Instead of, if you, a common way to do this, to say that I may not have this exact thing you're looking for, but I have worked with a lot of people that do have that, and I had no issues keeping up with them. I had no issues doing the same work that they did. We were all equal. We all performed the same duties and had the same accomplishments, more or less. So I have no, apprehension about being able to do that on the job. I've worked with people that have done that. I've had to do the same things they've done, and it worked out okay. So I'm not worried. Okay, so in a nutshell, those are some of the things that can help Joseph Levin, or Levin Joseph. Either way, whichever way you go, who am I to judge? There you go. Awesome. And we have, this is Julia. Julia, once again, thank you, Julia, for the super chat, says, I work in a university. My manager resigned. I have 10 years technical and 2 years managerial or manager experience. I've covered her duties, though I lack a PhD. How can I approach her bosses and say I want her job? Well, to me, Julia, it seems a little bit self-evident. Like, you've just made a very compelling case to me in this note that you are capable of handling the job, okay? So saying, I've covered her duties, although I lack a PhD. Okay, so you've also demonstrated through that fact that you can do the job, right? Okay? So I would go to them and say a couple of things. First of all, I would give them a lot of passion. I would say, look, I really want this. I'm passionate about doing this work. I enjoy doing this work. I seem to have the talent to do this work. And I think it will be a tremendous opportunity for me. And I'm really excited about doing this, right? So you give some passion. I'm not necessarily giving this in chronological order. You wouldn't necessarily open with this, but you need to communicate that. Then you need to back up your case by saying something similar to what you just said to me. I've been doing the job. I've been performing all the duties. You could maybe list a couple of them out. I've done this. I've done this. I've done this successfully. I've done that successfully. I haven't had any complaints. I haven't not been able to handle any issues or any aspects of the role, right? Okay. So you're sort of backing it up with evidence, right? Okay. And if you have worked with other people, like there's coworkers or people you've interacted with, you can say a couple of things. You could say, well, I've really enjoyed working with that person and that person. They've been great. And then, if it's possible, depending on how you're doing this, if this is a conversation or a note of some kind, like an email or whatever, I would do this preferably face to face. You could use those people as sort of references and say, like, I would go to them first and say, I would like to put in for this. If I do, can I use you as a reference to say that you've worked with me and that, it's gone well and you give me a good review? And let them say yes. If they don't say yes, then don't do it. Okay. Then when you go in to make a case for yourself, you can provide these references as additional backup and say, well, I've worked with these people. The job involves working with them, and they will tell you that, I'm, as far as they're concerned and their interactions with me, I'm doing a pretty good job and they enjoy working with me. Right? So that may also provide some backup for your case here. Okay? Now, I would do this, as I said, I would do this two ways. I would go and talk to someone in person, and then I would also, after the fact, back it up with a formal communication, usually an email of some kind. Okay? So go and speak to whoever it is. Okay? Maybe there's more than one decision maker you might want to talk to, but there's certainly one decision maker you have to talk to, whoever has the decision about who gets hired here. Talk to them face to face. Go to them when they're not busy. You're not pestering them. The default thing is after lunch on a Friday, right? After lunch, people have had their break. They're full of food. They're content and a little bit less stressed. And it's a Friday, their Friday, so the weekend is coming up and they're looking for, so they're in a good mood, right? Don't talk to them 8 a.m. Monday morning. Talk to them just after lunch on a Friday, if possible. Stop by their office, knock on their door, say, hey, can I talk to you for a second? And then make your case and keep it under 10 minutes. And then follow that up with a formal email saying, like, as per our conversation, I'm putting in this, and then your summary. Okay, so hopefully that helps. Thanks for the super chat, Julia. That's awesome. I appreciate your support. And super chats get you instant answers to whatever question you have. And if you need more, feel free to say so. Okay, Joel Diary says, when submitting a cover letter, should I include my business analysis and recommendations to help you stand out and improve my chances? Business analysis? No, not usually. No. Listen, all kinds of companies have all kinds of wants, wills, and needs when it comes to cover letters. There is no real purpose for a cover letter in this day and age. So the fact that it still exists, different companies and different organizations define it, meaning that they want different specific things in there. There's no hard set rhyme or like rule for what you have to do for a cover letter. Traditionally, the only thing that you'd have to put in a cover letter is you'd have to explain why you're sending them a resume. You would say, I'm applying for this job, and I would very much like you to consider me, and I look forward to coming in for an interview if that hopefully happens. And then you provide your contact information. That was the only actual purpose of a cover letter. Now, you can embellish it with all kinds of things, but that's really what the only essentials that are in it. So you don't have to do any of that. If they've asked for it, sure. And, if you have questions like this, a great thing to do would be to contact the recruiter, preferably by phone, and say, hi, I saw your ad. I'm thinking of applying for it. Would it make sense for me to include a cover letter? And would it make sense to also attach this information? Is that what you guys are looking for or not really? And just see what they say. And the fact that you're talking to them, now they know who you are, they know you're interested, they've had a sample of how professional you are on the phone and how easy you are to deal with and how much you care about this role. So that elevates you above the crowd just by doing that. Okay? So that's how I would recommend handling it if you had questions like that. Okay, I'm going to get to the main topic today. We're going to come back to questions later. But the main topic of this live stream is how to choose a career. I keep forgetting to say I manually switch my cameras around here. So, like the state-of-the-art technology we're dealing with. So I keep forgetting to do that. It gets very boring just staring at me right from the front. Okay, here we go. So how to choose a career. This is what I would recommend. This is presumably if you're younger and you're facing the problem that everybody has in their lives, which is, what do you want to do with your life, right? Now, for some people, this is not really much of a dilemma because, you've always known what you wanted to do and you're going to just do it. And it's a standard career path, okay? In which case, you don't really need much soul searching here. It's pretty obvious. However, for other people, it may not be obvious. For example, if you got some educational qualifications where you could go into many different careers based on those qualifications, now the waters are muddied a bit, right? Because you're qualified for, say, 25 different things that can all be separate careers. But the big question is, which path should you start down, right? The other reason why you might be wondering this is you have an idea of the end destination. Let's say you want to be a doctor or something, okay? But the question is, what do I need to do to get there? What type of work experience should I try and get that will most set me up to do that thing in the future? Okay? Now that's why you might be asking this question, and that's what we're going to be talking about, how to get answers to that. Okay? So let's get the obvious stuff out of the way first. The first thing that probably most people will want to do here is obviously look up the educational qualifications. That's a necessary first step. Okay? So if you have, a university in, near where you live, like if you live in a city and the city has at least one big university, the obvious thing would be to go to the university, like not physically, but look up online, which you probably can do, their entrance requirements for various different faculties and see what requirements they have. So if you want to get a master's degree in a certain thing, then obviously, look at their syllabus and look at like what they need for you to enter the master's degree program. And then if that's a certain bachelor degree or some other thing, look up what the requirements at high school are for that, right? If you're not yet finished high school. That's obvious. Hopefully everybody knows how to do that. But let's get to something more challenging. Maybe you don't know if you should get education or you should get more practical job experience. What is regarded as more favorable if you want to be in a certain role? Okay, well, here's something you can do. LinkedIn is an incredible tool, and you can use LinkedIn for many, many different things. Not just the obvious things that a lot of job, career type people talk to you about, but this is an example of how LinkedIn can be the missing tool to give you the answers to these types of questions. So let's say you know what your end destination is. You want to be, the CEO of a company. Let's just take something like that. Now, the obvious question is, you can't go to university to learn how to become a CEO. There's no CEO program, right? And even if there was, it probably wouldn't be sufficient to immediately walk out of that program and then just into a CEO role. Like, there's a lot more to it, right? So the question is, if that's your ambition, what should you take? Now, what you can do is you can go on LinkedIn and you could do a people search, and you could look up people who are currently working as CEOs. So their job title is CEO. And let's say they're in your hometown or they're in a location that you're interested in working. Okay. You can do a people search where you limit it to only people who are currently working in their job title is CEO, and they're physically located in your city or another region of interest to you. Okay. So you could do a search and then you can find all these results. Okay. Now, all these profiles will come up. Now, hopefully everybody is familiar with LinkedIn, but when you get on LinkedIn, you essentially see a version of somebody's resume. That's what their profile is. So you can usually see their entire work history, their education, and like the dates that they've done various things, right? And under each job, you can maybe get some detail as to what they did in that job, right? So you could look up people who are currently working as CEOs now, and look at a whole bunch of them. And let's say you want to be the CEO of, I don't know, a software development company. Okay. You can look up individuals who currently work as CEOs of software development companies in your city and look at their profiles. Now, if they all have engineering degrees, that suggests that you probably will need an engineering degree to be the CEO of a software development company. If they all don't have engineering degrees, that suggests that you don't need an engineering degree to work as a CEO of a software development country in your city, right? You see how this works? On the other hand, if they all have certain experiences, it all took them 10 years to come up through, sales, let's say. They all came up through sales. Not a single CEO came up through operations or HR or, accounting, right? They're all salespeople. That tells you something else. That tells you, well, first of all, it seems like I need sales to do this. That seems to be the real world data here. I may not know why I need sales, but it seems to suggest that sales is very important. Okay. So you can look up their experiences, you can see what they have, and you can start to find patterns. Okay. If they've all worked in certain roles for different amounts of time, that suggests to you that you may have to work in that role, and that's a path to becoming a CEO. Okay, so that's the first thing you can do. Now, that will tell you some things, but it won't tell you everything. As I said, it won't tell you why, all the CEOs came up through sales, for example. That you won't be able to find the answer to that just by looking at these people's profiles, right? To get the answer to something like that, you have to go to the third sort of step here, which is informational interviews. Now, hopefully everybody here knows what an informational interview. If you've never heard of an informational interview, that's okay. Hopefully everybody knows what a job interview is, right? That's what we're here for. So you know what a job interview is. You go down and you meet with somebody for the purposes of evaluating you because you've applied for a job and they're seeing if you're a suitable candidate, right? That's the purpose of the interview. An informational interview is an interview, right? So you go down and you meet with somebody face to face, and they've set it up. So they've sort of invited you in, right? But it's not about a job. That's why you're not talking to them. You're not talking to them because you want them to hire you. That's not the whole point of this. It's because you want information. So basically, you've asked them a question and you're wanting to get an answer, right? So as I've said in this course where I talk about like how to do proactive networking, basically for introverts, right? A great way to do this is you connect with them on LinkedIn, okay, which is a whole thing, and you send them a note, and you say the most basic possible thing that you can say is you can say, hello, I would very much like to get your expert opinion on this industry, where it's going, and what skills, in your opinion, what skills might be important for the future. Please let me know if, I can maybe have 30 minutes of your time. We can maybe grab a coffee. You suggest the date, time, and place, and I'll be there. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Right? And you can send this out as a template to multiple people, right? And you would send this out, in our example, to the people that you found on LinkedIn who are currently working as CEOs of software companies in your city. We're talking about CEOs in this example, but don't be intimidated by the CEO title. I was a former CEO. It's really not that big of a deal. I mean, we're not talking about superstar Fortune 500 company CEOs. We're talking about like the thousands of CEOs that are in your city, right? Wherever you are. All the companies you see, they're all run by people. And, it's really not that big of a deal. It's not like you're some kind of weird, untouchable person. But anyway, they're just executives. And executives, you may not know this, but executives, part of their job is fielding unsolicited queries from the public. They occasionally get these as part of their job, and their job is to respond to them, right? It could be a new supplier. It could be a member of the press. It could be, a potential partner or a regulator, or, someone who's just setting up a new company and they could end up being your supplier or your institutional customer. They just want to get to know a bit more about your operation. So it's bad business to ignore these and to just tell people to get lost, right? That's what a lot of executives do. They sort of field these responses. And if you don't know, the general rule is to meet with somebody and talk to them, unless, assuming there's no red flags about what message they sent you. So you can easily do this. I've done hundreds of these in my lifetime. I built a consulting business basically doing this. I met with, and I just pretty much exclusively just met with CEOs. So as a coincidence there. But the idea is that you would set up an informational interview. You'd send out several requests for an informational interview for all these CEOs. Now, it's a numbers game, so maybe 90% don't respond, but 10% do. And they say, sure, I guess you could come right here. Let's do this location, this date and time. And if you are able to do that, then you can do this. You show up. Usually it's Starbucks is a great place to meet people. You set up a meeting. It's professional, but yet it's kind of casual, and it's not on somebody's turf. And if they're willing to meet you at a Starbucks, that means they're willing to get out of their office and off their location to come and meet you, which shows that there's a commitment there. They genuinely are taking this seriously. If someone says, yeah, come to my office, this time, it's like they're not lifting a finger to do anything for you. So that's generally less of a commitment. But this is something that you can do. And you would sit down with the person and say, hey, it's great. Thank you very much for meeting with me. I find, your career very interesting because I'm just starting out and my ambition is to become, a CEO in this industry. And I'm very much wondering if I could ask you a couple of questions about your career. Namely, is it necessary for a CEO of a software company to have come up through sales? And if so, why? Something like this. And that's how you can get the answers to these questions. So you wouldn't talk to just one person. You'd talk to several, and you'd ask them this question and several others. And at the end of it, you know exactly what to do. You know exactly why people say to do that. And the other great thing is now you have contacts that are CEOs. So if ever you have a question about that, you can potentially call them up, right? So if you wanted to learn how to become a doctor and you had questions about which type of medicine I should go into and which one is tougher and which one is better, set up a bunch of informational interviews with doctors in your city or your town or your region and start asking them these type of questions. What do you recommend for someone just starting out? What do you recommend I do? Do you recommend I take this program, or what are your thoughts on that? What would be better for young people today, to do this or to do that? And you get this information, and that will give you such insight into what career path you should take, if it's suited to you, what you can expect, how hard it might be, what the risks are. And that's a great way to make an informed decision of what your career should be. Okay? How to choose a career. So if you're passionate about something and you're really seriously thinking of doing it, don't do it blind. Know exactly what you're doing and getting into. And the brilliant thing about doing this is if you do the third part, which is informational interviews, which I highly recommend, is that you've got a bunch of contacts. You could pick up that phone and call one of these doctors or CEOs or whoever it is that you were talking to and ask them questions along the way. Right? So that's what I have to say about that. Hopefully that makes sense. Right, let's get back to questions. We have an entire screen of questions here. Myra Bear says, hi, Bill. I'm really passionate to make a career as a recruiter. My manager knew about that, but they did not want to promote me for that from recruitment coordinator. I was told that they don't have. Okay, so I left the company, and 1 week after they posted that they are looking for a new recruiter. So they lied to me by telling me that there's no open roles. What do you think about this? I was really good. Now I'm looking. Okay, well, let me just stop here and answer this. Okay. Well, if you are working as a recruiter, what you call lying, which technically is true, is going to be something you are going to be encountering quite a lot. Because the problem is, and this is absolutely infuriating to job seekers, by the way, and I agree. In the real world, you have something called protocol. And one of the things about protocol is that it's based on essentially manners, right? And so if you have to deliver bad news, if you say bad news really bluntly, it tends to make people upset. Now, I know what you're thinking. You might think, oh no, that doesn't work on me. Just give it to me straight. I prefer it when people are open and honest, they don't beat about the bush. Everybody says that, everybody thinks that, but when it's done to them, they get just as upset as everyone else. Okay? Myself included, right? So for example, instead of saying, if someone says, if I offer you this much money, then we can hire you, what do you say? And what you want to say is, no, absolutely not. That's ridiculous and it's almost insulting. Goodbye. Right? Now that would not be good protocol. So usually what people do is they say, well, I'll get back to you or something like that, right? Which is technically a lie, right? But the reason why it's done is because if you're just abrupt and blunt to everyone about everything whenever you deliver bad news, and recruiters, for one, have to deliver bad news all the time. Every job that they are recruiting for, there's one successful candidate and there's hundreds sometimes of unsuccessful candidates. You have to deliver hundreds of bad news messages to people, right? In some way, shape, or form, including silence. That could be the way they choose to do it. That's why they choose to do it a lot of times. That and laziness. So the reason why they don't want to say, nope, I don't think that you're good for this job. I don't think that you're qualified, and I don't think that your social skills are good enough, right? Maybe that's what they wanted to say. But if they had said those exact words to you, you'd have gotten upset. You probably would never have wanted to talk to them ever again. And you might have complained to a boss about them, about how they were rude to you or mistreating you or harassing you or whatever, right? So instead, recruiters try and tone it down. Now, some of them tone it down way too much to the point of being completely misleading, right? Or they say yes when the answer is really no. They say yes and then they ghost you. You know what I'm saying? So, but that's why they're doing that. Okay, for a start. So that's why they lied to you, because they're not going to give bad news to your face. A lot of times, it's a matter of where they should have delivered the bad news in a clear way. What they should have done is delivered it in a clear way, but yet very tactful and respectful. And a lot of people don't have communication skills good enough to be able to do that kind of thing. So that's why this recruiter, I'm sure, did what they did. Okay? Incidentally, this is the kind of stuff I teach in that course, by the way, if you want to get good at this. That can really supercharge your career, by the way. Let's continue. Myra says, now I'm looking for this role and I have no any opportunities despite I am really dedicated. Okay, you got to learn how to write better, Myra. Maybe just run it through a grammar check. I even took a course with University in Recruitment. I have a degree in economics and 10 years experience. Okay. I feel really desperate. Yeah, it's not fun. Any of this stuff is not fun. But listen, what you need to understand, and everyone needs to understand this, is that if you are looking for a job, you are going to get rejected far more than you are going to get, an opportunity, right? That's just the name of the game. Okay, so just the fact that you have been rejected once or twice or 10 times or 100 times, don't let that be a reflection on you. It's not a reflection of you. It's a numbers game, right? And the other thing is that you could be dealing with someone who either doesn't know you, doesn't know your value, or hasn't cared to look deep enough to see your value. So they're making a snap judgment based on totally incomplete information or evidence, right? So, I mean, that, once again, is not a reflection of you. That's a problem with them, right? So you can't take this stuff to heart. But what you need to do is get better at communication and in convincing somebody, right? And I mean, that, like this, these are huge topics. I can't really give you all the details on them, but that's the bottom line. Okay, Jim says, thank you for your great videos. If you're applying for a professional job and have additional side jobs like adjunct professor, do you put these types of jobs on your resume also before you're full-time? You're applying for a professional job but have side jobs. That depends. Okay, sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. And the reason is, like I said in a previous live stream, like was it last week, where we were talking about resumes? Your resume is not for you. It's not like a record of accomplishments for you of which you are most proud. That's not what a resume is. The resume exists for you to get interviews. In order to get interviews, you have to convince someone that you are what they are looking for. In order to do that, you have to put things on the resume, on your resume, that specifically appeal to them and what they said that they're looking for. So that means your resume has to change for each job you apply to. Now, that's not practical if you're applying for 1,000 jobs in a day. It just isn't. Okay? But for you to have an effective resume, for it to result in you getting interviews and getting considered, you have to tailor your resume. I know this is not what people want to hear, but it's true. So if you have a static resume document that you then use to apply to 500 jobs a day, that will not yield a lot of bites. That will not generate a lot of interviews for you. But if you only apply to a smaller number of jobs that are a bit more tailored to what you really want to do, and then you customize your resume for each of those. Let's say you apply for 3 of those jobs in a day, okay? And you really tailor your resume to what they said they were looking for in the job posting, and you make it very prominent so it pops out, it jumps out at you when you're only looking at the page for less than 10 seconds. You can immediately see those things. That will produce a lot more interviews for you than applying to 500 jobs a day with a static resume. Okay? So the question of should you put this type of work on there or that type of work, that's going to be dictated by what they've said. So if they said we're looking for these traits and this work as an adjunct professor demonstrates those traits, fair enough. I would make it explicit, like I did this, it shows this. If they haven't said anything like that, and this work as an adjunct professor is not related to anything they've said they're looking for, then I would leave it off, okay? That's how this stuff works. They really don't care about you. They care about themselves. Their job is to find a candidate that has all these different checkboxes. This education, this experience, these traits, this knowledge, right? So when you send them a resume, all they care about is, do I see the things that I'm interested in, that I'm looking for? If the answer is no, I don't see that within 10 seconds, rejected. If they do see it, it jumps out at them, they go, and then they shortlist that resume, okay, for consideration. And they'll probably bring you in for an interview. Okay, so that's how these things work. Leo says, I'm currently a recent graduate of mechanical engineering. Oh, my condolences. Just kidding. I was electrical engineering, so there's a natural rivalry there. 1 year since graduation. I will say something, though. The mechanical engineers, generally speaking, had better personal hygiene than the electrical engineers when I was in school. So that's one thing. They also, some of them had leather jackets, and they looked halfway cool. That was a good thing. But this is like way back in the day. So things could have changed. I don't know. Electrical engineers generally wore sweatpants, right? And they didn't shower. and they could barely function, in a socialized world, but they were very smart and they did math like nobody's business. Currently without any engineering work experience, thinking about doing personal projects to strengthen my skills. How can I begin strengthening certain skills that only a job could provide? Are there any other avenues? Yes. Okay, let's get into this. Okay, I've talked about several things in the past that you can do. Number one, here's how you break the catch-22 of having no experience, but not being able to get a job because you have no experience, and not being able to get experience because no one will give you a job, right? That's a catch-22. The way you break that is by some form of networking, okay? Let me explain. If you go back in this live stream, I don't know if you're just joining us or you were here from the outset, but if you go back maybe about 20 minutes, I was talking about how to get an informational interview, where I said you send a note, send a message to someone, in this case, presumably someone who can give you a job, and you basically ask them for an informational interview. You say like, hello, I'd very much like to get your expert opinion about this industry, right? So if you're a mechanical engineer, I don't know who employs mechanical engineers, manufacturing companies, automotive companies, construction companies, I don't know. But whoever it is, you would know better than me who would employ those, right? But if you already have an idea of several companies you'd like to work for, okay, like that you wouldn't, hire mechanical engineers like yourself, okay? Contact the people at those companies, the people that are higher up, not the people down at the bottom, not the people in the middle, but the people higher up, right? Executives and up. And say, I'd very much like to get your expert opinion on this industry. Would you be able to spare me, say, 30 minutes of your time? You name the date, time, place, and I'll be there. Thank you very much. Have yourselves a great day. A lot of people won't respond, but some people will. And you might have 3 or 4 informational interviews set up with executives at the companies that hire a lot of mechanical engineers, right? Then you go down and you meet them, and all you do is you ask questions. You say like, hello, this company I know does this type of work, where do you see this industry going? What do you see as the biggest challenges? And if they say something like, oh, we've had a lot of problems with, this steel manufacturing process or processing process, that's the real challenge. It's a lot of focus is being put into that. You ask them about that. You get them to talk all about it, and you just listen and you learn. And you do this with several people. And at the end of the day, you can go away and you can come back, say a week later, like send them a note and say, I was really thinking about what, some of the things you told me. And it's really interesting. And I've decided that, I'd really like to work in that area of steel processing that you referred to. I find that fascinating. Just so you know, if ever you guys are looking for someone who can do this, like I'm just graduating this year, let me know, because I'd love to work for you guys, specifically in that area if possible, right? Now, that will get you so far, because of all the candidates that they could have hired right out of school with a degree in mechanical engineering, okay? You're the only one that showed up. You're the only one that has proved to them that you're passionate about this, that you care. They've already met you in person. That's like a free sample of what it would be like to work with you. They've already seen how professional you conduct yourself. You didn't show up in sweatpants. You're a mechanical engineer. You might have had the sense not to show up in a leather jacket. You maybe showed up in professional clothes. You presented yourself in a very professional way. And you asked that executive all kinds of questions. You listened very intensely to what they were saying, because you care about what they're saying. That gives that person a really flattering experience. How often does someone come to you in your life and say, I'd love to know what you know. Teach me, just like, what's your opinion on this? And they just listen while you give your opinion on various things that you know about, like your job and your industry. right? They'll feel really good about you. So the next time they have to hire a mechanical engineer, and you could be one of them, there's someone high up in that company that'll say, no, let's get this guy or this person because I've met them and they're awesome, right? And I know they're passionate about this. That's the kind of people we need, right? So that's one of the ways that you break that catch-22 of not having work experience, but no one will give you a job because of a lack of experience, okay? There are other ways too, but they're all variations of networking, okay? Instead of like showing up at a job interview, which is a highly artificial exchange, and trying to talk up why you're good, you're demonstrating right in front of them how good you are. When they talk to you about steel manufacturing, you know all the background of steel. You're a mechanical engineer. You understand all the issues, all the challenges, so you can have an intelligent conversation when you talk shop when it comes to that kind of thing. They know you know your stuff and they like you. That's how you get your foot in the door. That can really open doors for you. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense, Leo. That's a great question. Joel says, was Joel here before? No. Yeah, Joel Diaries, right? Yeah, here we go. Got a 4-year experience that's not related to my current career. Should I remove that from my LinkedIn page because it's a waste of space, or should I keep it to address what I was doing during those 4 years? Opinion is divided on what you should put on LinkedIn. Certainly for your resume, what I said earlier applies. Like if it's your resume has to be tailored to this specific job, what they said they were looking for, and what they care about. So if this work experience is not what they said they were looking for or not what they care about, you might wish to delete it, because all things being equal, if you put unrelated stuff on there that they're not looking for, it dilutes what you do have. Okay? If they look at your resume and every single thing on there was like stuff they're looking for, that gives the impression that like you're a perfect fit. If you have all that plus you got a whole bunch of things that they don't really care about, then that takes away somewhat. You're not the perfect fit. You might be able to do this job, but you're not the exact mold, that they had in mind. So there's always a temptation to put everything that you consider valuable on your resume because you're proud of it. You know that it's helped contribute to who you are today and what you're capable of. But that's not how it comes across when you're on the other side of the table, right? Unfortunately, that's the difference in perception here. Okay, so all things being equal, I would leave it off, but I can't answer that question for you because what I don't know is I don't know your career ambitions. So maybe you're working in one area right now, but you've done some work in this other area here, which is unrelated. But really, part of you really wants to work in this other area here. So you want to keep the door open for any opportunities. So if that's the case, for example, then you wouldn't delete that from your LinkedIn profile. You know what I'm saying? It depends what your situation is and what's going on. But for a resume, I would say yes. If it's unrelated, take it off there. Myra says, honestly, that team was quite toxic with the workforce turnover. I was too neutral for the team, was not engaged in their games. That's why manager did not see me as part of the team that they wanted. And they wanted me to leave, I guess. I wanted to leave them too. But thank you for the answer. I'm following your channel and learning from you. Well, thank you. Listen, Myra, here's one thing you need to know about people. People hire in their own image. They hire people like themselves, and they place value on the things that they themselves have. This is a warped perception, a bias that everyone has, right? So I'm an introvert. So I tend to think quite highly of introverts because I myself am an introvert. Now, as we know, there are pros and cons to being an introvert, and there are pros and cons to being an extrovert, right? But if you are interviewing for a job with an extrovert and you are an introvert, they will probably have a different opinion about being an introvert than you yourself have. They will place less importance, less value on being an introvert than you do. Conversely, you have the same bias. If you're an introvert and you're interviewing with an extrovert, you probably don't think very highly of extroverts. These people that keep flapping their gums and talking and, just not getting down to actual work, right? These people that waste time, they're all talk, they're all cosmetic, appearances, but there's no substance, right? What are they good for, right? That's what a lot of introverts think of extroverts, which is false, right? Now, yeah, some people are like that, but generally that's not true. There's a lot of value to being an extrovert, and there's a lot of things that they can do that introverts can't do. And I've seen that. I've developed a healthy respect for extroverts, and I've seen why you would hire them instead of introverts for certain things, right? But introversion works the same way, right? You would want to get an introvert for certain things because they can just kick ass in certain roles that extroverts wouldn't be able to perform very well in, right? So we all have that bias where we place value on things that we ourselves have, and that includes personality traits and personality types, right? So this is the problem, right? People who aren't real expert managers, and there's a lot of those, they tend to do this when they're running teams. They tend to make everyone conform to the way they work and the way they communicate and the way they act. And they want everyone to place value on the same things that they place value on with the same priorities, et cetera, et cetera. And if you differ from that, they tend to see that as a problem. And they give you a hard time one way or another, right? This is a very common problem, and it deals with a flaw of humans, right? When you learn really how to manage people properly, is that you learn that most people are different. They have different backgrounds. Some people are salespeople, some people are accountants, some people are IT people, some people are operations people, some people are marketers, right? Some people are lawyers, et cetera, et cetera. And they all have a different perspective on the same situation. Whereas someone sees risk, the only thing someone else sees is opportunity, right? And vice versa. You ask a lawyer what we should do, and it's all about protecting yourself and doing the safe thing. You ask a salesperson what you should do, and they want to take big risks and really put yourself out there, and because there's a chance of tremendous gain, right? That extends to personalities. That extends to communication styles, work styles, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So that's probably why this manager is behaving the way a lot of less educated supervisors and managers behave. And just because you have a different work style, different personality, they're beating up on you for it, and they're pushing you out. And it seems like they're doing it successfully, right? It is not a reflection on you. It's just showing that you're different from this person. Now, the problem is that if you have a manager like that and you really don't click with them, things will go better for you if you try and click with them. That's a general rule. Now, whether that's something you want to do is totally up to you. But if you want to get on in that situation, you at least have to learn to, I'm not saying you don't know this, I'm just saying the general rule is you at least have to adapt to their style, if only so that you don't label yourself as some kind of problem to them, right? It's sad, but true. Now, not all situations are worth saving. Sometimes the best thing is just to leave. I've left several jobs because I had people over top of me usually that just I did not see eye to eye with. And you make a decision whether I should stick this out or I should go find something else. And there's been several situations where I've gone and found something else. So that's for you to decide. But if you want to stay, you definitely need a certain amount of rapport, certainly with your boss and also with your coworkers. And sometimes it's possible to do little things that enable that aren't really that much of a big deal to you. Okay, so does that make sense? I'll leave you to decide what you should do in your situation, but that's generally how this stuff works. And thank you for the kind words. Who do we got here? Carmiego. Carmiego's back. Thank you for the advices given today, Bill. You're absolutely welcome, Carmiego. Carmen San Diego. Easily Done says, "Hi, Bill. Happy Civic Day." Yeah. Oh, that's the biggest day of the year, isn't it? We all dance around the maypole and offer sacrifices. The usual. Do you think it's worth it to take a 10 to 15% pay cut for a job opportunity with more learning and more career advancement opportunities down the road? Well, listen, I can't answer that for you. All I could say is the obvious, which is that sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Now, I'm technically Generation X. And the thing about my generation was that as a general rule, we saw our parents, people in the 50s and 60s, getting burned on corporate promises. So what do you call the parent? I guess the baby boomers, right? Like technically the boomers. They, the way it worked, certainly in the West, was that organizations had a very parental relationship with their employees. So once you got a job with a company, you're expected to stay, sometimes your entire career. And they would take care of you. They would give you retirement benefits and all kinds of benefits, things that paid off long term. And you would have a career with the company. And you wouldn't leave them at the drop of a hat. And they wouldn't lay you off for like some BS reason, just for quarterly profits or something like that, if they could avoid it, right? That was generally the working relationship. Now, and I saw this big time. I saw people that of that generation that, had been promised all this stuff when they were young. The company then reneged on their promises later on when these people were approaching retirement. So you'd have to pay all this money into a pension fund and blah, blah, blah. And then you were going to get a big pension. And then, oh no, sorry, we changed the rules and you only get a tiny little pension, like a pittance of what you were expecting. And people were burned. And at that point, you're old. What are you going to do? You're going to like jump the company after working there for 30 years? Like, no. So that was the rule. So Generation X, my generation, we kind of started with like, okay, it's just an exchange. Employment is simply a straight exchange. I give you my time, you give me cash, and we're good. And I don't have any loyalty to you, and you know that you don't have any real loyalties to me. You don't feel loyalty to me, right? So let's just agree that this is how we're going to coexist here. So that was basically Generation X. Now, it's gone in a weird way kind of since then with the next, like the millennials and everything. On the one hand, the millennials are looking at Generation X and saying, we don't trust, corporate management and all this kind of stuff. And we don't believe in their promises when they promise things. But at the same time, these generations, from my perspective, they seem a little naive, a little more naive than even we were, even Generation X, that they believe that someone tells them this is what you have to do, and the kids believe it. And it's like I'm always amazed by this. I've taught my kids, are grown now. I've taught them to be more skeptical. Things like this. You got to consider the source, right? So if someone's making you a promise and saying, I can't pay you really what you're worth now, but if you stick with me, there'll be more opportunities down the road. If that's all and there's no other factors here, I would say reject it. But that's simply based on my life experience. I don't know if that's really the thing to go off in your particular situation, right? So what I would do is I would look for evidence, okay? So if they're saying, there's some amazing opportunities if you stick with us and trust us, what evidence is there that they're going to honor those promises? Are there any other coworkers that you work with that went down that path and how did it go? Did they deliver on these promises, or was it just, did they renege on these commitments? So look for that, and that might give you a bit of a sort of compass on where you should go here. But, never stop looking. Like never, you can stay in a place and hopefully it'll work out, but you lose nothing by looking casually, for other opportunities and alternatives as you go. The more options you have, the better the outcome will be. You'll come out on top if you have a lot of options. Then you don't have to take anyone's deal because you got alternatives, right? So these are some things that I would consider when you're in that situation. Don't just blindly trust people, but don't reject anything out of hand, which is when it's not based on any evidence, right? I know that doesn't really help, but these are some of the things you should look at to make a more informed decision. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Yeah. And also, the thing that throws everything off is your ambition. What do you want to do? Maybe you just want to go in this other direction. I mean, yeah, they pay you more money here, but you really want to do this. You know, what I said earlier about getting informational interviews, that's also going to be a useful tool in a situation like this. If you want more career advancement opportunities down the road, if you do this other thing, go and talk to some people who have done that other thing and ask them, have you had more career opportunities? Ask them about specific things to do with their experience. How did it go for you? What were some of the options you had? Would you recommend it? You know, things like this, and see what they say. If they all tell you to a person like, no, I don't feel it was worth it, I should have done this other thing, then that tells you something. You're welcome, Joel. And user says, even when not asked, would it help if I prepared a pitch deck for an interview to impress the interviewer? Usually not. You see, most recruiters won't have a clue what a pitch deck is, unless they've asked for it, right? Now, if you're in certain areas, like you're in business school or what, something like that, or you're working in some area where they deal with pitch decks, you're like dealing with private equity or entrepreneurship or startup world, excuse me, where they deal with pitch decks all the time and they understand what those are and they know how to read them. Sure, there's no harm in it if it's not this insane amount of work for you to do. Yeah, go for it. But generally speaking, I would say no, unless they've shown you any evidence that they care about a pitch deck or even know what one is. I wouldn't just automatically create one proactively. I don't think that would be a good investment of time, but that's just my opinion. Like the other thing is that a pitch deck is something that you're making a case for yourself. And without knowing what someone's looking for, it's hard to make a good case for yourself. Like if you don't know what they're looking for, how do you go up and sell yourself or sell an idea? You can't really, because everything you're saying is an assumption or a guess that they care about that thing, right? Now, I know some things are safe bets in the world of business, like investors want to make money, you could assume that. But beyond that, you don't know what their preferences are. So just making a pitch deck before you even really know, you know what I'm saying? Like what someone might be interested in. I understand that you might want to show off your impressive abilities to create a pitch deck, and you're proud of the fact that you know what one is and how to do one. That's great. But you know what I'm saying? Like it may not be appropriate. So that's what I would say for that. And there you go. If anyone has any questions, get in the chat, let me know. Otherwise, I'll be winding this down in a couple of minutes. Is my camera too bright for you guys here? I have to occasionally turn it down. This is the level of technology I'm dealing with here. There we go. Maybe something like this. A little bit easier on the eyes. This one's still brighter, but that's okay. Yeah, so Bob's your uncle. I like that expression. A very business expression, right? Yeah, so cam is okay. Okay, good. Good. No, it was brighter before, and I think it saturates everything. And I know that people don't really like staring at like a solid white background for extended periods. So it's always a challenge to get this stuff right. Anyway, but yeah, that's what I have to say to that. So earlier in this live stream, we covered how to choose a career. And we answered the question at the very beginning, what's the best answer I would recommend to the job interview question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? If you are looking for a job right now, if you are having troubles with the job market and how to go about getting employed, I have a course here that is basically all my recommendations from beginning to end with templates, all the principles of what's going on from beginning to end, all laid out one at a time so you can understand how this stuff works and you can navigate this world and all the different options there are to do this. Check out that course. There is a link in the description. And I also make videos that give details of my courses so that you know exactly what you're getting into. It's fully transparent. You know exactly how it works and so on. The reason I originally set up my YouTube channel was because I think a lot of people that give advice on how to get jobs are recruiters. Now, there's some fantastic recruiters out there, but there's a lot of bad ones. And the other thing is that I have found in the past some advice that some recruiters give is very self-serving. You see, it's almost like you're playing a game of poker with them. They're on the other side of the table during a job interview. They're trying to get you to reveal the dirt about yourself, and they're trying to get you to eliminate yourself. And you're trying not to, right? So they are your adversary in a sense. And I found that, some things that some recruiters say are very self-serving. Like, for example, the king of trick questions is the question, what is your weakness? So they'll bring you into a job interview and they'll ask you some standard questions. And one question is, what is your weakness or what is your greatest weakness? And, one of the things that they're trying to do in a job interview is they're trying to get the dirt on you. They're assessing you as a person, like your social skills, your professionalism, your communication skills, and so on. But they're also trying to find what's wrong with you, because on paper, you look like a fantastic candidate. You said all the right things. You say you have this, all the things we're looking for. That's great. But usually, that's a little too good to be true, right? We know that maybe some of your experience isn't as wonderful or as comprehensive as you're letting on. We want to get the dirt on you. We want to find out if this work is really what you want to do, and so on, right? So they ask this question, what is your weakness? And what they're hoping for is that you'll just hand them a reason on a plate and say, here's everything bad about me that I haven't disclosed on my resume or in my job application. Here it all is. Now you know. And you can eliminate me based on that. Because after all, you're talking to 8 candidates in person for this job. You've got to eliminate 7. Let's make this easy. Here's how you can eliminate me. Right? And so what I've heard is I've seen a lot of recruiters advise people. They say, when you get asked this question, what is your weakness? You should just be honest and give them your weakness. Give it to them plain and straight. And then say, but I'm working on it. Because all we really want to know is that you are self-aware, that you have weaknesses, and that you're working on them. And that is such crap. And it's very self-serving. So they advise people to play right into their hand. It's like a master poker player advising you how to play poker against them. They're not really going to advise you in a way that you're going to win. They're not going to say, here's how to pull the wool over my eyes and get the job, right? No, they're going to advise you to play right into their hand. So I'm not saying all recruiters do this. A lot of them are very, very good, but I've seen some people do this. So that's why I originally set this channel up, because I've taught recruiters in university, and I know their little tricks, and I know why they ask certain things, and I know what their goals are. And there's such a disconnect between what their actual goals are and what they advise people to do in some cases. So that's why I originally started talking about this stuff. Anyway, there are 27 people here. Thank you for being here with me today. I will be back next week with another episode of How to Get Hired, where we'll cover more of this type of material. And if you have any questions, that's your opportunity to get some answers straight from me. Okay, thanks very much. You guys are awesome, and I'll see you in a while. Take care.